I watched Sandra pack her bags while wearing the engagement ring I'd saved 2 years to buy, except now, she was packing to move into Richard's penthouse, not our future home. She didn't know I was standing in the doorway. She was too busy on the phone, her voice dripping with that sugary tone she used to reserve only for me. "Baby, I'm almost done." "Yes," I told Joseph, "it's over." No, he didn't cry or anything, honestly. He just stood there like he always does, pathetic and broke. The laugh that followed felt like a knife twisting in my chest. I'd given this woman 5 years. 5 years of working double shifts, skipping meals so she could eat at nice restaurants, lying to my landlord about late rent because I'd spent the money on her birthday trip. 5 years of believing that love, real love, was enough to build a future on. But apparently, love doesn't pay for penthouses. Richard Chen did. Richard, the so-called millionaire who'd swept into Sandra's marketing firm 3 months ago with his tailored suits, luxury watch collection, and endless talk about his investment portfolio. Richard, who drove a car worth more than I'd earn in 5 years. Richard, who promised Sandra everything I couldn't give her and she'd eaten it up like a starving woman at a feast. What Sandra didn't know, what neither of them knew, was that I'd already seen the papers. Not wedding papers. Bankruptcy papers. Richard's empire was a house of cards built on maxed-out credit and loans he'd never be able to repay. His penthouse. Rented with money he didn't have. His car. Leased and 3 months behind on payments. His watch collection? Fakes bought from a dealer I personally knew because I'd once considered buying a knockoff for Sandra's father. I could have told her. Could have saved her from the disaster she was walking into. But I didn't. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't warning someone about the cliff, it's watching them run toward it at full speed while you step back and build your own empire on solid ground. Sandra thought she was trading up. She had no idea she'd just made the worst decision of her life. And I had no intention of stopping her. My name is Joseph Miller, and I'm the kind of guy people usually overlook. Not ugly, not particularly handsome, just average. Brown hair that never quite styles right, glasses I've worn since high school because contacts irritate my eyes, and a wardrobe that consists mostly of button-downs from outlet stores and jeans I've had since college. I work as a software developer for a mid-sized tech firm. The pay is decent enough to cover rent, groceries, and the occasional night out. But it's not the kind of money that turns heads. I'm not buying bottles at clubs or vacationing in the Maldives. I'm the guy who brings lunch from home and considers happy hour at Applebee's a splurge. But I'm good at what I do. Really good. The code I write is clean, efficient, elegant. My boss once told me I have an intuitive understanding of systems architecture that usually takes people a decade to develop. I'd been quietly building something on the side for 2 years, a proprietary algorithm that could revolutionize data compression for cloud storage. I hadn't told anyone about it yet. Not my coworkers. Not my family. And definitely not Sandra. Sandra Reeves was everything I wasn't. Confident. Magnetic. The kind of woman who walks into a room and people just notice. She had this way of laughing that made you feel like you were the funniest person alive, and when she looked at you, really looked at you, it felt like the rest of the world disappeared. We met 5 years ago at a mutual friend's barbecue. I was awkward, she was charming, and somehow by the end of the night, she'd given me her number. I still remember our first date. I took her to an Italian restaurant I couldn't really afford, and she ordered the most expensive wine on the menu without even looking at the price. I panicked internally but smiled externally, and when she reached across the table to hold my hand, I decided it was worth every cent. "You're different, Joseph," she'd said that night, her eyes soft in the candlelight. "You're genuine. Everyone else I meet just wants to show off or impress me. But you're real." I'd fallen for her right then and there. The first 2 years were magic. We spent weekends exploring the city, nights tangled up in my tiny apartment watching movies, mornings where she'd steal my coffee and I'd pretend to be annoyed. She talked about the future like it was a certainty, our future, together. "When we get married," she'd say casually, like it was already decided. "When we have kids. When we buy our house." I proposed on our 3rd anniversary. Nothing fancy, I couldn't afford fancy. I took her back to that same Italian restaurant, got down on one knee, and offered her a ring I'd been making payments on for 6 months. She said yes. She cried. She posted 17 photos on Instagram within an hour. But somewhere around year 4, things started to shift. It was subtle at first. She started mentioning her coworkers more, especially the successful ones. "Did you know Marcus just bought a summer home?" Olivia's boyfriend surprised her with a trip to Paris. "Richard from the investment team drives a Tesla." Richard. Even before I met him, I hated the way she said his name. Then came the comments about my job. "Don't you ever want to do something bigger? Joseph. You're so talented, why are you wasting it at that company?" My friend's boyfriend just got promoted to VP. He's only 32. The complaints about money followed. We never go anywhere nice anymore. I can't even remember the last time you bought me flowers. Do you know how embarrassing it is when my friends ask about wedding plans and I have to say, we're saving up? Saving up. As if I wasn't already working 50-hour weeks and eating ramen so she could have her Starbucks and her boutique candles and her monthly spa days. But I loved her. So, I worked harder. I picked up freelance projects. I stayed up until 2 a.m. writing code for clients who paid in PayPal deposits. I ignored my own needs: new shoes, a working laptop that didn't crash twice a day, a bed frame that didn't squeak every time I moved. I told myself it would be worth it. That once I launched my algorithm, once the money came in, Sandra would see that I'd been building something all along. I just needed a little more time. But time, apparently, was something Sandra wasn't willing to give me. 3 months ago, Richard Chin joined her firm. 3 months ago, everything changed. Sandra started coming home late. Work dinners, she said. Started dressing nicer, spending more time on her makeup. Her phone was always face down on the table, and she'd snatch it up the second it buzzed. I knew. Deep down, I knew. But I didn't want to believe it. Until 2 weeks ago, when I found the text message she'd forgotten to delete. Richard, can't wait to have you all to myself. Leave him. You deserve better. Sandra, soon. I promise. I just need to figure out how to tell Joseph. I stood there in our bedroom, her phone in my hand, and felt something inside me crack. Not break, crack. Because broken things shatter into pieces, but cracks run deep, silent, and structural. And once something cracks, it's only a matter of time before the whole thing collapses. I didn't confront her. I know that probably sounds cowardly, but I had my reasons. First, I needed to know everything. Who Richard really was. What he'd promised her. How deep this betrayal actually went. Second, and more importantly, I wanted to see if Sandra would come clean on her own. If there was even a shred of the woman I'd fallen in love with left inside her, she'd tell me the truth before it was too late. So I played dumb. I smiled when she came home late. I asked about her day and pretended to believe her lies. I kissed her goodnight and held her while she fell asleep, even though every touch felt like holding a stranger. Meanwhile, I started digging into Richard Chen. It didn't take long to find the cracks in his polished exterior. Richard wasn't a self-made millionaire. He was the son of a wealthy family that had disowned him 5 years ago after a series of failed business ventures. He'd burned through his trust fund by 25 and had been living on borrowed money ever since. The penthouse Sandra was so impressed by. Leased under a shell company that was 2 months behind on rent. The Tesla? Leased, with payments overdue. The designer suits? Bought on credit cards that were maxed out and being serviced by minimum payments. Even his LinkedIn profile was a fabrication. CEO of Chin Capital Ventures was a company that existed only on paper. No employees. No assets. No actual business. Richard Chen was a con artist in an expensive suit, and Sandra had fallen for every word of it. I could have shown her the evidence. Could have sat her down, laid it all out, and watched her world crumble in real time. But I didn't. Because 3 days after I found that text message, Sandra came home with an announcement. Joseph, we need to talk. I was sitting on the couch, laptop open, pretending to work on a freelance project. My heart was pounding, but I kept my face neutral. Sure. What's up? She sat down across from me, not next to me, across from me, and I knew what was coming. I think we should take a break. Not break up. A break. As if that somehow softened the blow. I closed my laptop slowly. A break. I need some space to figure things out. We've been together for so long, and I feel like I don't even know who I am anymore outside of this relationship. It was textbook breakup language. The kind of script people use when they've already checked out but don't want to be the bad guy. Is there someone else? Her eyes flickered just for a second, but it was enough. No. Of course not. Joseph, this isn't about anyone else. It's about me. I almost laughed. Almost. Instead, I nodded. Okay. She blinked. Okay. Yeah. If you need space. Take it. She looked confused, maybe even a little disappointed. I think part of her wanted me to fight for her, to beg, to plead, to make some grand romantic gesture that would give her an excuse to stay. But I wasn't going to give her that satisfaction. I'll stay with my sister for a while, she said, standing up. I'll come by this weekend to pick up some things. Sure. She hesitated at the door, like she was waiting for me to stop her. I didn't. The door closed behind her, and I sat there in the silence of our apartment, my apartment now, I guess, and felt that crack inside me widen just a little bit more. That weekend, I watched from the bedroom as Sandra packed her things. She moved through the apartment like she was erasing herself from it, taking her books off the shelf, her photos off the wall, her stupid decorative pillows off the couch. But she left the engagement ring on the dresser. Just left it there, sitting in its little velvet box. Like it was a piece of junk she didn't need anymore. I picked it up after she left. Turned it over in my hands. Remembered the night I proposed, the way her eyes had lit up, the way she'd kissed me so hard I'd almost fallen over. Had it all been a lie? Or had she just stopped loving me somewhere along the way and been too selfish to let me go until she found something better? I didn't have an answer. But I did have a plan. The next day, I called Juanita. Juanita Morales was my manager at work, sharp, ambitious, and one of the few people who actually understood the value of what I was building on the side. She was also the only person I'd told about the algorithm. Joseph? What's wrong? You sound terrible. I gave her the short version. Sandra. Richard. The breakup. Juanita was silent for a long moment. Then, you're better off without her. I know. Do you? Because you sound like you're about to do something stupid like beg her to come back. I'm not. Good. Because I have a proposition for you. That got my attention. What kind of proposition? I've been talking to some investors about your algorithm. They're interested, Joseph. Really interested. We're talking seed funding, development support, maybe even a buyout offer if the beta testing goes well. My heart started racing. How interested? 7 figures interested. I sat down hard on the couch. 7 figures. 7 figures. But here's the thing, Juanita continued, they want to meet you next week, and they want to see a working prototype. I have a working prototype. Then get ready, Joseph. Because if this goes the way I think it will, you're about to become very, very successful. I hung up the phone and stared at the engagement ring still sitting on the coffee table. Sandra had left me because I wasn't enough. She'd chosen Richard because he had money, or at least, because she thought he did. But in a few weeks, I'd have more money than Richard could ever dream of. And Sandra? Sandra would have nothing but regrets. The days following Sandra's departure felt surreal, like I was living in a parallel version of my own life where everything looked the same but nothing felt real. I still went to work. Still sat at my desk and wrote code. Still made small talk with coworkers who had no idea my entire world had just imploded. But inside, I was barely holding it together. The apartment felt too big and too empty all at once. I'd come home and half expect to see Sandra on the couch, or smell her perfume in the bathroom, or hear her laugh echoing from the kitchen. Instead, there was just silence. I started sleeping on the couch because the bed felt wrong without her. I stopped cooking because eating alone made my chest hurt. I'd open the fridge and see the leftovers from meals we'd shared, and I'd have to close it again before the memories dragged me under. Some nights, I'd lie awake and replay every moment of our relationship, searching for the exact point where things had gone wrong. Was it when I didn't get that promotion last year? When I couldn't afford the vacation she wanted? When Richard walked into her office with his fake smile and faker watch? Or had she always been this way, shallow and calculating, and I'd just been too blind to see it? The not knowing was the worst part. Because if I could pinpoint the moment, I could rationalize it. I could tell myself it wasn't my fault, that there was nothing I could have done differently. But without that moment, all I had were questions. Had she ever really loved me? Or had I just been convenient until something better came along? My phone buzzed constantly with texts from her. At first, they were apologetic. Sandra, I'm sorry for how I handled things. You deserve better than that. Sandra, I hope we can still be friends eventually. Then they turned defensive. Sandra, you're not even going to respond. Really mature, Joseph. Sandra, I guess I was right about you. You never actually cared. And finally, cruel. Sandra, Richard treats me better in one day than you did in 5 years. Sandra, I hope you realize how much you're going to regret letting me go. I didn't respond to any of them. Let her think I was heartbroken and pathetic. Let her think she'd won. Because soon enough, she'd realize exactly what she'd walked away from. Juanita became my anchor during that time. She checked in on me every day, sometimes with work updates, sometimes just to make sure I was still functioning. You eating? She'd ask. Yeah. Liar. I'm bringing you lunch. She'd show up at my apartment with takeout and refuse to leave until I'd eaten at least half of it. She didn't ask invasive questions or try to give me unsolicited advice. She just existed in my space, a reminder that not everyone in the world was Sandra. One evening, about a week after Sandra left, Juanita and I were sitting on my couch going over the algorithm's presentation for the investors. This is really good, Joseph, she said, scrolling through the slides on her laptop. Like, better than I expected. You've been holding out on me. I shrugged. I wanted to make sure it was perfect before I showed anyone. Well, it's perfect. These investors are going to lose their minds. I took a sip of the beer she'd brought over. What if they don't? Then we find different investors. But trust me, they will. She closed the laptop and looked at me. Can I ask you something? Sure. Why didn't you ever tell Sandra about this? I was quiet for a long moment. I wanted to surprise her. I thought, if I could just build something big enough, something successful enough, she'd be proud of me. She'd see that I wasn't just some mediocre guy with a mediocre job. Juanita's expression softened. Joseph, if she couldn't see your value before the money, she doesn't deserve to see it after. I know. Do you? Because you've got that look on your face like you're thinking about telling her. I shook my head. I'm not telling her anything. She made her choice. Good. Juanita leaned back against the couch. Because when this algorithm takes off, and it will, you're going to have every opportunity in the world. Don't waste them looking backward. She was right. I knew she was right. But late at night, when the apartment was dark and quiet, I still found myself wondering if Sandra ever thought about me. If she ever regretted what she'd done. If Richard was everything she thought he'd be. Then, one night, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer. But something made me pick up. Hello. Joseph. My stomach dropped. It was Sandra's mother. Mrs. Reeves. Oh, thank God. I wasn't sure you'd answer. Her voice was strained, worried. I need to talk to you about Sandra. I closed my eyes. Mrs. Reeves. With all due respect, Sandra and I aren't together anymore. If she needs something, she should call me herself. She doesn't know I'm calling you. Joseph, please. Just hear me out. I sighed. Fine. Sandra's been seeing this man, Richard. Do you know him? I know of him. He's not who he says he is, Joseph. I've been doing some digging, and he's in debt up to his eyeballs. He's been lying to her about everything, his business, his money, all of it. I know. There was a pause. You know. I've known for weeks. And you didn't tell her. I laughed, a hollow, bitter sound. Why would I? She made it very clear that I wasn't good enough for her. If she wants to learn that lesson the hard way, that's her choice. Joseph, she's my daughter. I'm asking you, please talk to her. Warn her. She won't listen to me, but she might listen to you. No. Joseph. Mrs. Reeves, Sandra left me because she thought Richard could give her a better life. If I tell her the truth now, she'll just think I'm jealous or bitter. And honestly, I don't owe her anything anymore. Her voice cracked. She's going to get hurt. Then she'll get hurt. I'm sorry, but I can't keep protecting someone who doesn't want to be protected. I hung up before she could say anything else. My hands were shaking. Part of me felt guilty. Mrs. Reeves had always been kind to me, and it wasn't her fault her daughter was selfish and short-sighted. But the other part of me, the part that had spent 2 weeks sleeping on a couch and choking down panic attacks, felt nothing but cold satisfaction. Sandra wanted to play grown-up games with a con artist. Fine. Let her learn what happens when you bet everything on a lie. The investor meeting was scheduled for a Thursday afternoon at a sleek downtown office building, the kind with marble floors, floor-to-ceiling windows, and receptionists who looked like they'd stepped out of a fashion magazine. Juanita and I arrived 20 minutes early. Both of us dressed in the nicest clothes we owned. She'd made me buy a new suit for the occasion, and I'd grumbled about the cost, but looking at myself in the lobby's mirrored walls, I had to admit I looked good. Professional. Put together. Like someone worth investing in. You ready? Juanita asked, adjusting her blazer. As I'll ever be. We were escorted into a conference room where 3 investors were waiting, 2 men and 1 woman, all impeccably dressed and radiating the kind of confidence that came from having more money than God. The presentation went flawlessly. I walked them through the algorithm, demonstrated its capabilities, explained the market potential. Juanita backed me up with financial projections and growth models that made even my head spin. By the end of the hour, all 3 investors were leaning forward in their chairs, eyes bright with interest. This is impressive, Mr. Miller. The woman said. Very impressive. We'd like to move forward with a funding offer. One of the men added. Our lawyers will draw up the paperwork, but I think we can safely say you're looking at an initial investment of $1.2 million, with performance incentives that could take it much higher. My heart stopped. $1.2 million. I tried to keep my face neutral. Professional. But inside I was screaming. Juanita squeezed my hand under the table, a silent "I told you so." There is one other thing. The second man said. We'd like to feature you in an upcoming Forbes profile. We're partnering with them on a piece about emerging tech innovators, and your story fits perfectly. Forbes? I repeated, dumbfounded. Yes. It's great publicity, both for you and for us. What do you say? What did I say? I said yes. Of course I said yes. As Juanita and I left the building, I felt like I was floating. Holy shit. I breathed. Once we were safely in the elevator. Holy shit, Juanita. Did that actually just happen? She grinned. It happened. You're about to be a millionaire, Joseph. A millionaire. 3 months ago, I'd been eating ramen and dodging my landlord. Now I was signing contracts with Forbes-level investors. The irony wasn't lost on me. We need to celebrate. Juanita said. Drinks. Dinner. Something. I can't. I have. Something I need to do first. She raised an eyebrow. Something involving Sandra? No. The opposite, actually. I drove to the jewelry store where I'd bought Sandra's engagement ring 2 years ago. The same salesman was working, a middle-aged guy with a kind smile and a memorable face. Can I help you? He asked. I pulled the ring box out of my pocket and set it on the counter. I'd like to return this. He opened the box, examined the ring, then looked up at me with a sympathetic expression. I'm sorry, sir. We don't typically accept returns after this long. I'm not asking for a full refund. I don't want it anymore. He hesitated, then nodded. I can offer you store credit. That works. He processed the return in silence. And when he handed me the credit receipt, he said, for what it's worth, whoever she was, she didn't deserve you. I managed a small smile. Thanks. As I left the store, I felt lighter, like I'd finally shed the last piece of dead weight I'd been carrying around. Sandra was gone. The ring was gone. And I was free. 2 days later, my phone exploded with notifications. At first, I thought something had gone wrong, maybe the investors had changed their minds. Or there'd been some kind of technical glitch. But when I opened my messages, I realized what had happened. The Forbes article had gone live early. 30 under 30. Meet Joseph Miller, the software developer revolutionizing data compression. There was a photo of me in my new suit, standing in front of a clean white backdrop, looking every bit the successful entrepreneur I was about to become. The article detailed my algorithm, my background, the investor deal. It even included a quote from Juanita calling me one of the most brilliant minds in the industry. Within an hour, the article had been shared thousands of times. My LinkedIn inbox was flooded with messages, job offers, interview requests, congratulations from people I hadn't spoken to in years. And then, buried in the middle of the chaos, I saw it. A message from Sandra. Sandra, Joseph. Is this real? I stared at the message for a long moment. Then I smiled. And I didn't respond. Sandra didn't just send one message. Over the next 3 days, my phone became a constant stream of her desperate attempts to get my attention. Sandra, Joseph, please talk to me. Sandra, I saw the Forbes article. I'm so proud of you. Sandra, can we meet? I need to explain some things. Sandra, I made a mistake. A huge mistake, please. Sandra, Richard isn't who I thought he was. Sandra, I miss you. Sandra, I never stopped loving you. Each message was more pathetic than the last, and I savored every single one. This was the woman who'd told me I'd never amount to anything, who'd called me pathetic and broke while packing her bags to move in with a con artist, who'd left me sleeping on a couch in an empty apartment because I wasn't good enough for her. Now, she was begging. And I had zero intention of making it easy for her. On the 4th day, she showed up at my office. I was in the middle of a meeting with Juanita and the development team when my assistant knocked on the door, looking uncomfortable. Joseph, there's a woman here to see you. She says it's urgent. Juanita's eyes narrowed. Sandra. I nodded grimly. Probably. Want me to have security remove her? The thought was tempting. But another part of me, the part that had been quietly planning this confrontation since the day she left, wanted to see her face, when I told her exactly what I thought of her. No, I said. I'll handle it. Sandra was waiting in the lobby, and the moment I saw her, I almost didn't recognize her. She looked rough. Her hair was messier than I'd ever seen it, her makeup slightly smudged, and she was wearing jeans and a hoodie, a far cry from the polished, put-together image she usually maintained. But it was her eyes that really caught me off guard. They were red-rimmed and desperate, darting around the lobby like she was afraid I'd disappear before she could speak to me. Joseph. She breathed. Standing up quickly. Thank you for seeing me. I didn't agree to see you, I said coldly. You showed up at my workplace uninvited. She flinched. I know. I'm sorry. I didn't know how else to reach you. You haven't been answering my messages. That's because I don't want to talk to you. Please. Just 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. I glanced at my watch. You have 3. We walked outside to a small courtyard area where employees usually took their lunch breaks. It was empty now, quiet except for the distant hum of traffic. Sandra stood a few feet away from me, wringing her hands like a nervous child. I saw the Forbes article, she started. I know. You mentioned that in your messages. Joseph, I had no idea you were working on something like that. Why didn't you tell me? I laughed a harsh, bitter sound. Why didn't I tell you? Sandra, I was working on it the entire time we were together, but you were too busy obsessing over Richard's fake money to notice. Her face crumpled. I know I screwed up. Joseph, I'm so sorry. I was stupid and shallow and I didn't appreciate what I had, but I do now. I see it now. You see it now. I repeated slowly. Let me guess, Richard's money ran out. She looked away, and that was all the confirmation I needed. What happened, Sandra? Did the penthouse get repossessed? Did the Tesla get towed? Or did you finally realize that the man you left me for is a fraud with a credit score lower than his IQ? Don't do this, she whispered. Please don't be cruel. Cruel? You think I'm being cruel? My voice rose despite my best efforts to stay calm. You dumped me like I was garbage, Sandra. You told your friends I was pathetic. You flaunted Richard in my face like he was some kind of prize. And now you want to waltz back into my life because you saw a Forbes article and realized I'm worth something after all? That's not fair. Fair? I stepped closer, and she instinctively stepped back. You want to talk about fair? Was it fair when you emotionally checked out of our relationship but kept me around as a backup plan? Was it fair when you spent money I didn't have on things you didn't need while I worked myself into the ground trying to make you happy? Was it fair when you left me without even having the decency to tell me the truth? Tears were streaming down her face now. I know I hurt you. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. But Joseph, I love you. I've always loved you. No, I said firmly. You loved the idea of me. You loved having someone who worshipped you and never questioned you and made you feel special. But the second I stopped being useful, the second someone shinier came along, you dropped me without a second thought. That's not true. Then why did you leave? Sandra, I demanded. If you loved me so much, why did you choose him? She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Because we both knew the answer. She'd left because Richard had money. Or at least, because she thought he did. And now that the money was gone, now that Richard's house of cards had collapsed and left her with nothing, she was crawling back to me. But I wasn't the same man she'd left behind. What happened to Richard? I asked, my voice cold. Sandra's shoulders slumped. He's gone. His creditors came after him. Everything he owned was repossessed. The penthouse, the car, everything. He's facing lawsuits, maybe even criminal charges for fraud. And where does that leave you? I moved back in with my parents. She admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I quit my job because I couldn't handle everyone at the office knowing what happened. Joseph, I've lost everything. Good. She looked up sharply, eyes wide with shock. What? I said good. You deserve to lose everything, Sandra. You gambled on a con artist and lost. That's not my problem. How can you say that? Her voice broke. I know I hurt you, but I never thought you'd be this cold. You made me this way. For a moment, we just stood there, staring at each other. I could see the exact moment she realized I wasn't going to take her back. The hope in her eyes flickered and died, replaced by something darker: panic, maybe, or desperation. What do you want from me, Joseph? She asked, her voice shaking. What do I have to do to make this right? Nothing. There's nothing you can do. We're done, Sandra. We've been done since the day you walked out. But the article said you're about to be rich. We could what? I interrupted. Get back together? Build a life? Pretend the last 3 months didn't happen? I shook my head. You had your chance to build a life with me. You chose Richard instead. I chose wrong. She shouted, her composure finally shattering completely. I know I chose wrong. But people make mistakes, Joseph. People deserve second chances. Not from me. Her hands balled into fists. So that's it? You're just going to throw away 5 years like they meant nothing? You threw them away first. She stared at me, tears streaming down her face, and for a split second, I felt a pang of guilt. But then I remembered the nights I spent alone in that apartment. The humiliation of reading her text messages to Richard. The ring she left on the dresser like it was trash. And the guilt evaporated. Goodbye, Sandra. I turned and walked away. Behind me, I heard her sob, loud and broken and desperate. I didn't look back. When I returned to the office, Juanita was waiting by my desk. How'd it go? She asked. She wanted me to take her back. Juanita snorted. Of course she did. What did you say? I told her no. Good. She paused, then added, you okay? I thought about it. Yeah. I think I am. And, surprisingly, I meant it. For the first time since Sandra had left, I didn't feel hollow or broken or lost. I felt free. That night, I went home to my apartment, my empty, quiet apartment, and instead of feeling suffocated by the silence, I felt at peace. I ordered takeout, opened a beer, and sat down at my laptop. My inbox was still flooded with messages, business inquiries, interview requests, congratulations from old colleagues. But there was one message that stood out. It was from Juanita. Juanita. Drinks tomorrow night. My treat. We're celebrating. I smiled and typed back. Joseph. Sounds perfect. I closed the laptop, leaned back on the couch, and exhaled. Sandra was gone. Richard was gone. And I was just getting started. 6 months later. The Forbes feature had been just the beginning. Within 3 months of the article's publication, my algorithm had been fully developed, beta tested, and licensed to 2 major tech companies. The investors' initial $1.2 million had ballooned into a deal worth just over $8 million, and that was just the start. I'd been approached by venture capitalists, interviewed by major news outlets, and invited to speak at tech conferences across the country. Joseph Miller, the guy who used to eat ramen and skip meals, was now being called one of the most promising innovators in data technology. It was surreal. But the best part wasn't the money or the recognition. It was freedom. For the first time in my life, I wasn't scrambling to make rent or stressing about bills. I could breathe. I could plan. I could actually build the life I'd always wanted. I bought a new apartment, nothing crazy, but modern, spacious, and entirely mine. I upgraded my wardrobe, my car, and my laptop. I started going to the gym, eating better, sleeping better. And slowly, piece by piece, I started to feel like myself again. Juanita and I had grown even closer over the months. She'd become more than just my manager, she was my partner, my confidant, and one of the few people I trusted completely. We spent long hours working together, bouncing ideas off each other, planning the next steps for the company we were building. She pushed me to take risks I wouldn't have taken alone, and I grounded her when her ambitions got a little too wild. We were a good team. And somewhere along the way, I started to realize that my feelings for her had shifted into something more. I didn't act on it right away. The wounds from Sandra were still too fresh. And the last thing I wanted was to ruin the best professional relationship I'd ever had. But one night, after a particularly successful investor meeting, Juanita and I went out for drinks to celebrate. We were sitting in a dimly lit bar, laughing about something ridiculous one of the investors had said. When she looked at me with this soft, unguarded expression. You know, she said, swirling her wine glass, I'm really proud of you, Joseph. Not just for the algorithm, but for everything. The way you handled Sandra, the way you picked yourself up. Not a lot of people could do that. I felt my chest tighten. I couldn't have done it without you. Yes, you could have. But I'm glad you didn't have to. There was a pause, one of those moments where the air shifts and everything suddenly feels weighted. Juanita. I started, but she beat me to it. I like you, Joseph. More than just as a colleague or a friend. I have for a while now. She smiled nervously. I just didn't want to say anything while you were still healing. But if there's even a chance that you feel the same way. I kissed her. Not dramatically, not desperately, but gently, the kind of kiss that felt like a beginning, not an ending. When we pulled apart, she was grinning. So, I'm guessing that's a yes. That's a yes. Dating Juanita was nothing like dating Sandra. There was no game playing, no manipulation, no constant need for validation. Juanita was straightforward, ambitious, and unapologetically herself. She challenged me in ways Sandra never had, not by tearing me down, but by pushing me to be better, to think bigger, to stop settling for good enough. And for the first time in years, I felt like I was with someone who actually saw me not as a project to fix or a wallet to drain, but as an equal. We didn't rush things. We took our time, building something solid and real. And slowly, the ghost of Sandra started to fade. But of course, Sandra wasn't done yet. About 4 months into my relationship with Juanita, I started getting messages again. Not from Sandra directly, she'd apparently learned that I wasn't going to respond, but from mutual friends, acquaintances, even her mother. Carla, Sandra's friend. Hey Joseph, I know this is random, but Sandra's been struggling. I think she really regrets how things ended. Maybe you could reach out. Tim, college, friend. Dude. I saw Sandra at a party last night. She looked rough. I think she really misses you. Mrs. Reeves. Joseph, I know you're angry, but Sandra is my daughter. Please, if you ever cared about her, just talk to her. She's not doing well. I ignored all of them. But then, one evening, I got a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Joseph. It was Sandra. I should have hung up immediately. But something in her voice, broken, hollow, desperate, made me hesitate. What do you want, Sandra? I needed to hear your voice. I know you don't want to talk to me, but I'm begging you, please. Just one conversation. That's all I'm asking. I sighed. Sandra, we've already had this conversation. Multiple times. The answer hasn't changed. I know. I know you hate me. But Joseph, I'm drowning. My life is falling apart, and I don't know what to do anymore. I lost my job, my apartment, my friends. Richard ruined everything, and I have nothing left. And you think I'm going to save you? I'm not asking you to save me, she said quickly. I'm asking you to forgive me. Even if we never get back together, I just need to know that you don't hate me. Please, Joseph. I can't live with this guilt anymore. Part of me wanted to feel sorry for her. But the truth was, I didn't. Sandra. I said slowly. I don't hate you. I don't feel anything for you anymore. And that's exactly the problem. You want closure. You want forgiveness. You want me to absolve you of your guilt, so you can move on with a clear conscience. But I'm not going to do that. You made your choices, and you have to live with the consequences. That's not my responsibility. Joseph. Goodbye, Sandra. I hung up. And this time, I blocked her number. A few weeks later, Juanita and I were having dinner at an upscale restaurant, one of those places I used to walk past with Sandra and think, maybe someday. Now, I could afford it without even blinking. We were halfway through our meal when Juanita's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, frowned, and then showed me the screen. It was a tabloid article. Ex-fiancée of Forbes entrepreneur spotted working retail after public scandal. Below the headline was a photo of Sandra looking exhausted and miserable, standing behind the counter of a department store. The article detailed her fall from grace, describing how she'd left me for Richard, only to end up broke and jobless when his empire collapsed. It even included quotes from anonymous sources, saying she'd been trying desperately to get me back. Juanita looked at me carefully. How do you feel about this? I stared at the photo for a long moment. A year ago, seeing Sandra like that would have destroyed me. I would have felt guilty, responsible, compelled to help her. But now I felt nothing. I feel like she's finally facing the consequences of her actions. I said. And honestly, it's not my problem anymore. Juanita smiled and squeezed my hand. Good answer. 1 year later, I was standing in the lobby of a brand new office building, one that I owned. Miller Data Solutions had officially launched 6 months ago, and we were already making waves in the industry. Juanita was my COO, and together we'd built a team of brilliant, passionate people who believed in the work we were doing. We'd just closed a deal with a major corporation that would triple our revenue. Life was good. Better than good. As I stood there, looking out at the city skyline, my phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number, one I didn't recognize. I almost didn't open it. But curiosity got the better of me. Unknown. I saw your company launch. Congratulations. You deserve it. It took me a second to realize who it was. Sandra. She'd gotten a new number. I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed out a reply. Joseph, thank you. And then I deleted her contact. For good this time. That evening, Juanita and I sat on the rooftop patio of my apartment, watching the sunset. You know, she said, leaning against me. A year ago, you were sleeping on a couch in an empty apartment, eating takeout and barely holding it together. Thanks for the reminder, I said dryly. She laughed. I'm serious. Look how far you've come. You built an empire, Joseph. Literally. I thought about it. A year ago, I'd been broken, humiliated, and convinced that I'd never be enough. Now, I was successful, confident, and surrounded by people who actually valued me. Sandra had thought she was trading up when she left me for Richard. But in reality, she'd traded away the one person who would have given her everything if only she'd been patient enough to wait. I'm proud of you, Juanita said softly. I kissed the top of her head. I couldn't have done it without you. Damn right you couldn't have. We both laughed. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, I realized something. I'd finally let go. Not just of Sandra, but of the anger, the bitterness, the need for revenge. She was a part of my past, a painful, messy part, but she didn't define my future. I did. And my future was bright. Epilogue. 3 years later. The wedding was small, just close friends and family. Juanita looked stunning in a simple white dress, her smile radiant as she walked down the aisle toward me. When the officiant asked if I took her to be my wife, I didn't hesitate. I do. As we kissed, I caught a glimpse of the guests. David was there, grinning like an idiot. My parents, who'd flown in from across the country. Juanita's family, beaming with pride. And for a split second, I thought about Sandra. I wondered where she was, what she was doing, if she'd ever found the happiness she'd been chasing. But the thought didn't linger. Because I'd found mine. And I wasn't looking back.